going to be covering two artists, Georgia O'Keeffe, as I said, and then Eva Hess. I actually didn't discover Eva Hess until a couple months ago in my travels around the internet looking for artists, and she's great. So we'll cover her. Anybody, does that name ring a bell with anybody beside me having mentioned her last week? No, okay, yeah. So don't feel bad. I just discovered her recently. But she was really big in New York, particularly in New York and the United States in the 60s. So good person to know about. All right, Georgia O'Keeffe, we'll start with her. But before we do that, I'm going to do, there's a 10-minute little video. Sometimes I've been doing these introductions about composition, and this one's good. It's like how to view a painting. So let me do the share screen.
And be sure to use your computer audio.
Yeah, where is that? Okay, computer audio. Do I need to go back to do that?
Yeah.
Oh, no, that's.
Or at least, well, whatever you did last time.
I just stopped share. That's not an option on this one.
Okay.
Share screen. Oh, here, share computer sound, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's it. All right. There we go. Okay. So, looking at paintings, this is called, my cell phone is ringing in the background. We'll ignore it.
How do you tell a story in a picture and indicate that one thing happened, then another, and then another? Figuring out how to arrange subjects so that a composition makes sense to a viewer is a crucial part of the painter's process. The artist who painted this scene used architectural elements to divide the story into sections, describing a sequence of events in a Pope's dream. If you showed the story like a cartoon, it would look like this. In the first event, Pope Sergius dreams of an angel bringing him an important message. A bishop has been assassinated, and he must appoint a replacement. The second scene takes place a little farther away, within a brick enclosure where two figures kneel beside the Pope. In the top right corner of the painting, the Pope is seen again, blessing a new bishop. Events in the painting progress from the present, in the foreground, to the future, in the background. To draw our attention to distant events, the artist omitted part of the courtyard wall and arranged the second scene to take place within two narrowing lines. He positioned the third scene along a line formed by a river and a road. These tapering lines lead us into the painting, while strong horizontal and vertical lines provide a sense of balance. Composition does more than lead our eye. The placement of figures and events can tell us who or what is important. When Pierre-Auguste Renoir painted this scene, he wasn't interested in recording a specific place. He wanted to capture a single moment in time. Renoir lavished much more attention on the young woman than on her companion, who is crowded into the top of the painting. Notice how the diagonal line of sight from the man to the woman echoes their clasped hands, and is repeated again by the trail. This diagonal emphasis leads us to consider what might happen if she follows him to the secluded area he's gesturing toward. Renoir arranged the figures to convey a feeling of openness. Follow the lines formed by the figures' arms and by their gazes. These implied lines help us focus on the interaction between the man and the woman. See how the relationship between the two figures is disrupted when their positions are reversed? Renoir's painting is balanced and unified because it has a well-thought-out composition. There's something curious about this bird's-eye view. Philips Koning painted this landscape as if he was looking at it from the top of a mountain, but there aren't any mountains in Holland. In a picture, artists use a variety of devices to create the illusion of space on a flat surface. Koning, like other artists, used a mathematical system for representing three-dimensional objects on a two-dimensional surface. This system, called perspective, is based on the realization that our eye reads parallel lines as coming together as they recede. Here you can see how the lines converge at a single point on the horizon. Notice how things at the bottom of the canvas appear closer to us? Instead of looking into the painting, which is the natural thing to do, look at the painting from bottom to top. As your eye moves up the canvas, the landscape seems to recede and things appear farther away. Comparing these two figures shows us how artists paint objects in the foreground larger and with more detail than objects in the background. This also helps achieve the illusion of space receding away from us. If Koning had recorded actual observations of the Dutch landscape, the picture would have looked more like this. Trees and hills would have obstructed his view over the horizon. Instead, Koning painted the illusion of a panoramic countryside. What might this painting look like if the figures were removed? Without the romantic couple, there's little sense of depth. Pierre-Auguste Renoir painted the figures so that they carve out the space. But only as long as branches and vines fall before them. Without the vines climbing in front of the woman's dress and the branches falling over the man's shoulder, the space appears shallow. The figures look as if they could easily slide down the path. Put the foliage back, and the figures appear fully integrated into the landscape. Look closely at this painting by Paul Cezanne. Do things seem like they're tilted forward a little too much? Cezanne intentionally depicted these objects from multiple viewpoints. That's why everything seems askew. In more realistic perspective, this scene would look something like this. Look again. Cezanne's perspective. More realistic perspective. The green vase would look more like this in reality, but watch how drastically different Cezanne's view is. We could only see the vase from this angle if we were looking into it from above. The views that Cezanne shows us are all possible, but not at the same time. If the table really existed the way Cezanne shows it, the apples would roll right off. Cezanne played with proportions and viewpoints to make us aware that in paintings, depth is an illusion on a flat surface. Artists use color to unify elements, to draw our attention to specific details, and to express emotion. This is especially evident in this painting of Christ's entombment by Peter Paul Rubens. His use of color dramatizes the suffering of those surrounding Christ. Rubens used a palette of red, blue, and white. But the white of Christ's body is vastly different than the fabric wrapped around him. Rubens painted Christ's flesh with blue undertones to convey his cold and lifeless state, encouraging viewers to contemplate his death. Notice how Christ appears thrust toward us on the left, where John the Evangelist supports his upper body. This effect is achieved partly through composition, the way that Christ is slumped diagonally across the canvas, but the effect is increased by John's flushed cheeks and brilliant red robe. This is because warm colors, like red, appear to expand and move toward us. When the robe is changed to another color, like blue, Christ doesn't appear to come so far forward. Cool colors appear to recede visually. This helps create depth. Behind Christ, the three Marys are all draped in blue. The cool blue color keeps them firmly fixed in the background. Rubens emphasized the relationship between Christ and the Virgin Mary through his treatment of their faces. The grieving Virgin Mary's face, and especially her lips, appear even more blue than that of her dead son. Her pink hand, contrasted with the blue of Christ's arm, and her tearful eyes convey that she's physically alive, while her pallor expresses her bereavement. Rubens used extremely intense and saturated colors to help tell the story of Christ's suffering and the grief of those who were closest to him in life. When light radiates from a central point, it creates strong highlights and shadows. This is especially evident on and around the central figures in this painting by Gerrit von Honthorst. Without the dark shadows on and behind Christ's leg, his figure seems less substantial. The shadows help convey volume, enhancing the solidity of Christ's form. Notice how the light is reflecting off the armor of the man across from Christ? Like shadows, highlights and reflections provide clues about surface and shape. Honthorst used light to indicate who is important, to add drama, and to create depth. Can you see where the light is coming from in this painting? It's not as obvious as in Honthorst's night scene. Here the light is scattered, suggesting the movement of foliage. The man is so hidden that we can hardly see his face. Branches and the brim of his hat cast shadows across most of his form. The woman, on the other hand, seems surrounded by light. She's especially radiant in contrast to the thicket behind her. Renoir made clear that the woman is the prime focus of the picture. The path to the right of the figures is also largely in sunlight. This helps lead us into the picture and makes us wonder what will happen if she follows her companion into the secluded area at the end of the trail. Renoir orchestrated the lighting to give this scene of a casual walk in the park a sense of movement and spontaneity. When you look at a painting like this one, you can tell that the artist worked hard to convey the tactile qualities of each leaf, flower, and butterfly. The artist, Jan van Huysum, was so concerned with creating a realistic picture that he included a fly and drops of dew on flower petals. He did all this while concealing his brushwork, so we get little sense of the pressure and movement of his hand across the surface of the painting. The tactile quality of Vincent van Gogh's irises is quite different. Clumps and dashes of thickly built-up paint create texture on the surface, so the paint itself takes on a sensuous, three-dimensional quality. How an artist treats the surface is important because smooth surfaces reflect light differently than textured surfaces. When a painting has a glassy surface, color, rather than texture, is used to create highlights, like the white highlights on the underside of this red flower. Can you tell which artist had more training or was more skilled? We often make hasty assumptions about an artist's ability based simply on how the surface of the painting appears. Both artists strive to depict qualities found in nature, but one was more interested in depth and details, while the other was more interested in vitality and movement. How do you tell a story in a picture and indicate that one thing happened, then another, and then another? Figuring out how to arrange
Okay, starts again. All right. So, any comments on that? Just the idea how artists use directional lines in a variety of ways, with light, with architecture, with the vanishing point, and they use color to emphasize front and what's near, what's close. Warm colors come forward, core generally move backwards. How objects are embedded in the landscape, etc. And how the brushwork itself gives a sense of the whole experience of movement. It's one way to get movement is through, Van Gogh is specialized in that with the actual thick application of paint and curly patterns. Okay. So variety of ways to accomplish the sense of how the eye gets invited into a painting and how it moves through a painting and the story it's telling. Yeah, any comments on that? No, okay, so yeah, go ahead.
Very helpful.
Yeah, good. So we're going to look at Georgia O'Keeffe. Going on here. All right, is that on your screen?
Yeah.
Good, all right, there she is. So a little bit about her. So she was born in 1887 in Wisconsin, died in 86, getting the Medal of Honor from Reagan, I think, for her art. She's considered one of the first American female abstract painters. And there was a movement called Precisionism in the United States. I'll show you a brief thing on that when I'm done with this. Precisionism is like to paint industrial scenes and drawing on cubism. So factories and smokestacks or machines done in a way that's part geometric not totally realistic. But that's considered a uniquely American artist looking for what's unique. What can we do that's unique? And this precisionism is one of them. But the fact is, they were drawing on Cubism as an inspiration. So some of her early paintings, particularly, we'll look at her when she lived in New York. She did paintings of skyscrapers at night, a few other things like that that are in that style. Let's see. So after graduating, she knew from the age of 10, she says, that she wanted to be an artist, and was real clear about that. So started getting art lessons in high school, and then went on to art school, and taught and then was in New York at the Art League. She dropped, at the Art League, and then she got a job in various art departments at 3 different colleges, Virginia, Texas was one where she was teaching, and also in Columbia, South Carolina, not at USC, but at Columbia College. I think I don't know if that's still there. She was experimenting, and then her big break came when she met her future husband, and he, Alfred Stieglitz, Stieglitz. He was an art dealer and a photographer, though he didn't sell his photos. He wasn't interested in selling them, but he showed them, and he was doing some original black and white, was getting some notice for his photography. And so Georgia sent him some of her abstract charcoals, and he was really impressed with them. And he had a show at one of his galleries, and it was a big success. And they met and they hit it off. They fell in love, and they had this intense, passionate relationship over the years, which was full of betrayals and pain, particularly for her. Supposedly, they would go for these love letters that they wrote to each other. There's 25,000 pages of love letters. They would spend 2 a day. They would write to each other, and they would be like 40 pages long. So like each, it's like 80 pages of love letters on a daily basis. So talking about intense relationship. I don't understand why he cheated on her. I think they had an open relationship, but Stieglitz fell in love with another photographer who was married, and it wasn't just a sexual affair. He really fell in love with this woman, and they ended up she divorced him, but she went into severe pain, and she was going back and forth, spending winters in New Mexico at that time. I just went there to get away from him, and had a breakdown, ended up in a psychiatric hospital for several months. Reminds me of Kasuma, our friend, Japanese artist friend from last week, 2 weeks ago, and got over it, but she didn't paint for a couple years. But they maintained a relationship, a friendship to the very end. And when he died, she settled his estate, moved back to New York. Took her 3 years to settle his estate. So, it's a very deep connection that was complex, put it that way. So that was a big, she had girlfriends, she was bisexual, complicated sexual identity. But that's important because her early flower paintings, Freud was really big in the 20s. He was brand new. Everybody was reading Freud. Everybody was interpreting art and this and that based on sex, sexual desires, the id, So when she started doing these flower paintings, they look like female. It's easy to see them as female genitalia. And art critics were just as if that means you understand it. And if you're going to interpret it at that level, yeah, maybe they do. We'll see. But is that all there is? And she got offended by that. That's not what I meant. I'm just painting flowers. And, when you do flowers close up, yeah, that's the feminine anatomy is present throughout nature. So, but actually, if you look at those paintings and stay with it, you can move past that. I'm not saying don't do that. Don't just interpret it sexually, but it's not just that, her paintings. So, but she took offense at that, and that actually changed her painting style for a while, so to get away from that kind of interpretation and started doing more landscapes. And she got back to flowers eventually.
By the way, so is the male.
That's exactly a good point. Yeah, I noticed that. Yeah, so the male, the floral versions of the penis is there too. So you're right. So, but that's called reductionism, you know, Freudian reductionism. Everything gets reduced to the sexual, it's sexual, you know. Or if it's biochemical or psychological reductionism now, all human emotions and depression and disorders are biochemical. They're just reduced to chemical interactions in the brain, and therefore you take meds to cure it or to.
But she was pretty adamant, Joe, wasn't she, about that's not what her paintings were supposed to represent?
Yeah, she was. Yeah, she took great offense at that. Yeah, she was. And then it may have been helped by Steinmetz took hundreds of nude photos of her, done very tastefully, artistically, and they got published some here and there. So that kind of put an emphasis, I guess, on her sexuality. So there was.
She was pretty upset with that.
Yeah, I know when that got. Yeah, they got published in a book. Yeah, yeah. But one of the things she's known for is he was a photographer and taught her photographic techniques, which were relatively new in the 20s, which we take for granted now, and which you can use in any photo editing software, Photoshop, etc., is cropping, magnification, zooming in, and these were original, these were new. So and she used a magnifying glass too with when looking at a flower. So, but this she zoomed in as if it had a camera and cropped. Okay, so she's giving most, as we saw in that video before, you know, most artists would record a scene standing back. That's our there's a conventional viewpoint. Okay, zooming in like she did and getting a close up, and like you're like an inch from that flower, and you can see things that you wouldn't notice before. It has an impact on you that's very different than if you're standing back. You know, and again, that's the influence of photography in her painting. Okay, so, and the other person who was a big influence was, and he's a little known American artist, but it's actually in some ways he's considered actually maybe a better artist than Georgia, is the artist Arthur Dove. We'll look at a few of his paintings, and he was doing landscapes that were semi-abstract, geometric, and you see that in her painting. So he was a friend of her husband, and she met him at his studio, and they had a lifelong friendship. And she admits, she says, I have a quote here, "It was Arthur Dove who affected my heart, who helped me to find something of my own." Okay. So he was a big, Arthur Dove was a big influence on her. As we go down here, you know, she started doing these flower paintings in the 20s, and also at the same time, she was in New York. She was going to the Southwest in the winters, and she was doing the New York paintings. And then she got quite a bit of fame, quite a bit of notice. In the 40s, I think she was the first female, 1942, during the war, first female to have a retrospective at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. So that's quite an accomplishment. And again, you know, female artists, they struggled. You would think artists are more, beyond that, but they're not. It was a man's world. It still is. That was in the 60s, 70s. I don't know. I don't think it's that much anymore, but it was still a man's world. So for Georgia to get the kind of recognition that she has was a really significant. You know, I wanted to say that our previous artist, Kusama, the Japanese artist, has a connection with both people we're looking at today, because she wrote to Georgia O'Keeffe, if you remember that, when she was in Japan in her 20s, asking for guidance, and Georgia responded, encouraged her to move to the States, and connected her with some gallery owners. And also, Kusama lived, when she was living in New York, she was in the same apartment building as Eva Hesse, and they became friends. So there's these three people have a connection from, okay. So she continued to paint in her 70s, but she started losing her eyesight and bad health, macular degeneration. Sounds like our friend Lynn Ott started kicking in at a later age for her than with Lynn. Lynn was born with it. So she only had some peripheral sight. But I think she continued to do charcoal. And then she died in Santa Fe, St. Vincent's Hospital in 1986. She wanted to live to 100. She was 2 years shy of that. Okay. All right, so the cassettas here have been to her house, the museum in outside Dallas, right? And he says really beautiful place. Am I right? Joe and yeah, oh, your mic is on. Okay, they were just saying they were there, and so her museum is there, and her nice, beautiful collection of her paintings in her home. She did interiors, right, of her own home, but she just has a very unique way of painting, her own style. So let's start looking at some of her paintings here, and it's this site, this one that does the various paintings. I like this site. It's so it's georgiaokeefe.net. We'll get you to this. But let's first, maybe I said, let's look at her New York paintings are not on this site. So I want to pop up those first, if I can find them. Okay, and then go to, yes. Let's look at her New York paintings, since they're not on there. Oops. Google Images. Keith in New York painting. So here's some of them. Street of New York. You see that on the right side? Very architectural, geometric, muted colors, create the sense of the canyon. You know, it's almost like you could be in a Grand Canyon or something. So, but that would be an example of precisionism. Getting down to the essence of a form. You know, this one is a famous painting of hers done at night in New York. It's also considered I don't know why, a portrait of her and her husband. So maybe each building represents, I don't know, some artists were doing people as buildings or something. So this is a well-known painting. Here's another one. And you can see her stylized way of doing clouds and the moon. And it's semi-abstract. It's a semi-abstract urban landscape is what you're getting. Okay. And this is Lake George, New York. Very pastel-like, soft tones, which became one of her styles. In terms of value range, there's the whites on the top and the bottom, and then you get the middle range of blues here, middle value range, but no real sharp contrast. Everything, there's a unified feel to it for me. That is, you have some sharp edges. She's contrasting. How artists do edges between spaces and objects is important, and if you vary them, it creates more interest oftentimes. So a sharp edge, one that's clearly defined, and then soft edges here where there's like a fuzziness between two distinct spaces in the middle. And here the reflection is kind of a soft edge, but the actual sky. So predominantly soft edges where the mist of the lake is blending into the background mountain. Here's another one. Actually, she got some acclaim for these. It's another skyscraper. So any comments on these? What are your impressions?
I just want to say that I've seen some of her paintings at an exhibit at the Metropolitan Museum of Art back in the 80s.
Right.
And you know, when you talk about edges and stuff, I just felt like I had to say,
yeah, go ahead.
When you get up close to her paintings,
yeah,
it's extraordinary. You mentioned about like you seeing something from a magnifying glass perspective, instead of from a distance, which most artists do. Right. When you get up even closer, right a foot from the painting. They're extraordinary. The vibratory rate of the paint itself, there are millions of little tiny details in her painting that you just absolutely miss by looking at them in reproduction. So I just want to say her painting, is just extraordinary in the depth in which she expresses.
Did you get a sense of that she's using translucent layers with the oil? Could you sense that, or is she just?
Oh God, I had none of these series of your talks and your showing stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not a painter, so no,
I
haven't
read anything how she did it, how she applied her paint.
No. Not at that time and not since. But what blew me away was that you're just seeing, when you see her paintings up close, I mean, really close. For some reason, there were very few guards in the museum at that point in time. Maybe there had not been very many attacks on paintings, but I was able to stand in front of numerous, and they were mostly her flower paintings, right on top of the painting, like literally 1.5 feet away. And what you could see in each one of those paintings was unbelievable.
Okay,
that you
good.
wouldn't see even
That's
from standing
that's
6
a
feet.
good overview, and we'll start looking at those. Like here's this Jimson weed.
So I'm wondering if Joseph Cassetta and his wife got to stand that close when they were in New Mexico. Were you, Joseph? Could you stand close to her paintings there?
Well, what they really, we went on a tour, and what they showed us more was, they showed us the landscape of what she painted. And then the tour guide actually put up a reprint of what she actually painted. And it was so much farther abstract from what you saw. And I remember her comment was that if she continued to take that same painting, by the end, when she was finished, it would have been totally abstract.
Right. I like abstract landscapes. Like here's one, this one here. I personally, what happened to it? This one, yeah. I like abstract landscapes because there's something familiar and something unfamiliar, and about them, and it's like reducing, like it's something like Cezanne was trying to reducing the landscape to essential shapes and not getting hung up in details too much, and then you can play with, and then playing with the colors. The mountains here are not red and but if you squint, sometimes at a landscape, you get a sense of different colors. But looking at, geometric shapes in the landscape and then emphasizing the geometric shapes in a variety of ways. There's triangles, circles, rectangles, various, like this one, various sizes of triangles, this long one, and then there's repeating sine wave curves in the mountains, and then how to integrate all that into a composition that draws your eye in and keeps you involved, and then moves you around the painting. That's what takes a lot of skill than just copying what you see. Okay, you can make it a lot more interesting. So using nature as a springboard, a natural scene as a springboard for then recreating the scene without totally abandoning it into pure abstraction, which you can do. But there are some artists that are really do some exquisite abstract landscapes, and I really like that genre personally. Okay, so anyway, here's just a taster of some of her New York paintings. You could see she's using geometric forms and framing, like the bridge. What is that? The Brooklyn Bridge or something? Framing the bridge like it's a stained glass, like it's a chapel here. It's the shape of a thing you would see in a chapel. Maybe she's saying there's something holy about it. So it's playing with that idea. But she got, what I'm saying is these paintings, the New York paintings, most people don't know. She uses a lot of black sometimes in the night scenes. Okay. And then, she's known for her paintings out west. So let's start looking at some of these, and we'll pause at them. All right, she liked painting Jimson weed, All right, we're just going to hold the image, look at it, you know, what you see, what you feel, what it does to you. Someone has their mic on. If you could turn it off, and then turn it on when you want to speak, if they can hear something. That's it. Okay, thanks. So if you want to make a comment, just refresh your mic. But anybody, what do you see? And just to start with the obvious, what you see and what maybe you feel about this. Want me to do the talking?
I really enjoy the colors she uses on most of her paintings and flowers. They're really beautiful.
All right, what colors do you see here? Stay with this painting.
Yeah, well, they're the grays, the blues, the greens.
Okay. What do you like about them? You say you like them. What is it?
It flows. I find it flows very nicely. Just all the different colors.
Yeah, well, there's a flow in the geometric forms, right? I mean, there are all these tendrils coming from the center of this Jimson weed are flowing out, and it's like they're alive, they're moving. There's a spew, like a life force that's coming out here. They're spewing out life, right? Particularly.
A lot of movement, yeah.
Yeah, particularly this top one, you know, so you're getting all this like a eruption, a lava eruption of, and it's like this one, I'm very little, so there's a progression also, if I notice. There's not much here, just a suggestion, and it's almost, it just occurred to me, she's showing flowers in 4 different stages of development.
Yes.
Or in a year. This one, right? It's just starting. Yeah, it's just starting to bud. Now it's starting to open a little. The colors are just starting. This is a suggestion of colors. The leaves are getting a little bit. The petals are getting a little bit more developed. And now this one, she's giving us a different angle on it. So this is side view, totally. She's slightly turning it slightly on this one towards us, towards the viewer. You can get a little glimpse of it. And now it's a straight down, looking into it, and we see the green. And now this one is turning slightly in the opposite direction of this one. These are complements. So she's giving the 4 seasons, and like 4 lights: birth, adolescence, adulthood, and full, you know, or early adulthood and full maturity here. Okay, and so that's one way to look at it. And there, someone says gray. You said grays. Yeah, and they're colored grays. They're not. She didn't get these. You're right. These are colored grays in here, and they're not done with black and white.
Wow.
They're mixed. They're mixed. It could be when you mix 2 complementary colors, you'll get a gray. So she could have mixed blue and orange. That's what I would have done to get this. You mix blue and orange, and then you add white to tone it down to keep that value in the middle. And you get a color gray, which are beautiful. All artists use colored grays, which are not created for black and white. You create them. There's various ways. One way is mixing complementaries, or you can mix triads and then add white. But so that there's color in the gray. It's suggested. Yeah, and it's not. Yeah, so it gives a very subtle, just a pastel-y softness to the whole, right?
I don't know. I guess where the light comes, it would create a different shadow than what she's showing.
Yeah, she's
No,
minimized.
if the light is going directly onto that plant,
Yeah,
there would be no shadow almost.
right. So
in that sense, it doesn't look real to me or realistic.
she's minimized the shadow on the flowers, but then here, look how this in terms of values, black. And it's not a pure black. It's a mixed black. And here, this area right here is the darkest. and provides the greatest contrast from here to here for the eye.
Yeah.
Okay? And that's down at the bottom, towards the bottom of the paper. As you work your way up, like into the sky, it's like getting these greens, the greens of the flowers are getting lit. They're a little more yellow. Yeah. So, but overall, whoops. Yeah. There, I can see one thing that she's really good at is creating a unity of tone, a key. That's called a key. How bright or how dark do you want a painting to be? Even though there's contrasts, strong contrasts in various parts of the painting, there's an overall very finely calibrated unity of tone. So it seems like it's like you're in that space, and it makes sense, even though it makes sense to me anyway. And these are more brightly lit, so the shadow is minimized. Okay.
Joe,
Yeah.
if she was going to the more abstract type of painting, she wouldn't care about the shadows, would she?
Well, the more, you're right, the more shadow, you can use some shadows, but but not for the effect of creating a realistic image.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah, that's the big difference.
okay.
Yeah. Let's see. All right, so gray lines with black, blue, and yellow. So here's a very abstracted flower form. Some critics argued abstractions based on female anatomy. It says here definitely organic, that resemble plant forms, flowers, and shells, but abstracted. So anyway, any comments on that?
I like the colors, but that's about it.
Okay.
You made a statement, Joe, that she looked into a flower and saw the real inside of a flower, and that's what that reminds me of. You know, the looking down through the flower into its, depths.
Right. So, I mean, your eye is definitely drawn into the black. It's right there, into this black, into the void.
Is it an iris?
Gray line. I think it's just an abstract. I think she identify what it is, this particular flower. But I mean, if there is a void here that you can play with it mystically. It's like pulling you into the infinite blackness of space. Just keep going. And I've seen there's other painters who do that, or they do that with self sculpture. And if you stand there and stare at this for a while, see if you really stand in front of it, you'll see that what I see is like these real subtle gradations of color. They're just like extremely subtle shifts. Just like how your eye, if you go into a dimly lit room, your eyes slowly adjust to the objects in the room. But at first, you don't see them. But if you just stand there, your eye will start to pick up. And if you do it with this painting, you'll see that this green just slowly, I bet if you stood in front of this painting and stood there and looked at this area, you would see how it's just a very subtle gradation into the blackness. And maybe it never really becomes black. It only appears that initially. Maybe there is no black. Okay.
It's just hidden, invisible.
Yeah, it's a reproduction, but
Almost looks like a watercolor.
yeah, there's a pastel-y, watery effect. Yeah, definitely. It's not real saturated. The color, all these colors are not. So she's letting, the whites of the paper or whatever has come through. But it's highly organized. It's a highly organized abstract structure that's kind of simplistic in a way. Does one thing, pulls you in, resembles a flower, resembles other things. So okay, but that's the kind of thing she was doing. One of the things she was experimenting with.
you know, Joe, you asked our reactions to
Yes.
these things. And I was just thinking, out of darkness, there comes light.
There you
That's,
go. Yeah.
you know, that's what struck
Right.
me most strongly first.
Yeah.
And then can you go back to that painting for a minute? Because that's, to me,
Yeah.
one of the most beautiful ones. I don't like
Okay.
the
Yeah,
Jimson.
and that's good. I think, Cheryl, that's good.
Not the Jimson weed one, the other one, whatever that was.
Yeah,
The
let me,
one-
I don't know, I have to go back. But that's good, because if you stand there and contemplate them, then you'll get thoughts and images will come to you.
yeah, and to
But
me,
they are like objects of meditation, because it has a metaphysical quality to it, to her. It's this one, right? Yeah, there's a
yeah,
metaphysical
I mean, I find it
involved.
extraordinarily beautiful. And it just reminded me, I didn't know that she was talked about as painting women's sexual,
Oh, that was the big thing.
you know,
That was
part.
like the major controversy.
But it came to me on my own. And then I realized as I looked at her paintings in person, that time I went, as I told you, there were numerous of her paintings there,
Yeah.
in a special exhibit. And they had been pulled from all over the place. I just thought, but this is, to me, looking at it again, it's creation. I mean, the whole reproductive act is how the world exists.
Yeah.
Right from the very beginning,
Yeah.
and it's in everything, and it's
There is a cosmic quality to
exactly,
the yin and the yang.
exactly.
What do the Hindus call the phallus, what they pour milk on? What's that called? For, you know, you're getting down to some really fundamental life forces of the beginning, cosmic forces.
Well, look at the one above it that you're showing,
Yeah.
the light iris. I mean, that's just extraordinary. It's so beautiful.
This painting here,
Degenerative,
This-
one
this-
above the gray lines one.
but this one is, I think it still is. It's sold for $44.4 million. In 2014, making it
Which
the
one?
highest selling. This one, and it was bought by one of the Walmart heirs.
The Jimson weed was spent. They paid that much money for that one.
Yes, $44.5 million for that. Yeah.
I know that much was paid. I didn't know it was for that painting.
Yeah. So in this one, she's just picked one. You know, there was 4 blooms in the previous one. This one, she's just narrowed into one. And it's like a mandala too, right?
Yeah.
It seems to be spinning. I could see it like we captured like a still image of a spinning. There's like this the prawn energy that's spinning, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These seem to be spinning. It's alive, you know. And so she has some of that Van Gogh quality about her, done in a very different way. But this life force, this prawn, this underlying energy is in all of nature, and she's like trying to paint that. And it's something I said in the very beginning, like how artists can, the major theme, one of the major themes in Western art is how to painting the divine, either ignoring it in earth and just painting saints, or bringing it down to earth, you know. And so there, to me, there's this definitely a spiritual mandalic-like quality to this. You know, having areas that are total, there's these strong black and white contrasts here and here, like in the other painting, and over here, you know, gives more emphasis to this, to the form. It creates a more dramatic, like Caravaggio with the play of dark and light, like he did. Even the leaves have a flowing quality for them, and they're not shaped like this. If you really look at leaves, she's exaggerating these fluted quality to give it this flow pattern. And,
Well, you know what? To me, it replicates like the Blue Ridge Mountains. You know, that undulating landscape,
Yeah.
varying colors, or New Mexico at different times of day. I mean, that's what it struck me looking at this today. Is it's as if she were painting a landscape of the earth with different rises and falls and darknesses and lights hitting it from, you know, shadows. I mean,
and if you get pulled into this, I agree. This has these geometric forms of the leaves resemble mountains, resemble other pods that you see in nature. If you go into this, you know, this 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, there's 5 here, but there's 6 of these. And it's like they got these white buds or whatever and yellow on the tip, and that seems to be rotating. And there's a black spot in the middle, you know, and so again, there's a pinpoint prick of the black hole of space, you know, at the center of the flower. So it's an object, for me, it's an object, if I would want to stand in front of it, it's an object of contemplation and just notice. It has a very calming, for me, it has a very calming effect and centering effect. And the subtle gradations of shading here, I find very calming. And then the framing here with the, particularly on this side. Any other comments before we move on? But again, cropping, this is something, if you would take a photo of the whole plant, you crop it and you zoom in. And no one had done that before with a plant. It was all, you know, flowers on the table from, you know, from 5 feet away or whatever. Some of her mountain landscape. Let's pick another one. Going down, yeah. And the horses. She did these.
See that one that looked like clouds or like fluffy?
Yeah, tell me where is that? Here, Black Iris.
No.
This one.
Yeah.
It's a ballet skirt or electric light. That's interesting. So it looks like a study in white. Oops. Oh, there it is. 1927. That's interesting. White on white, a little bit of black. That's a blooming, let's see. She simplified the energy of the blooming rose down to its essence, so it resembled a brilliant light radiating out of flat cubist planes. All right, so it's a real zoom into the whole.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, flowers are special, aren't they? The colors of flowers, and they're like they're from another world, like the subtle world, right? They're like little angels, or that birds and flowers are like that. So she's having to say, slow down and really look at these. And then she did the whole series of the skulls, the sky, and she said she wasn't thinking of death. Some of these are landscapes, some of these just floating. She just liked she liked the pattern of them. She liked the color. These skulls would often be just floating in the sky in the landscape. Maybe we'll see one. Like there'll be mountains, and this is just more purely abstract, the background.
It sure looks like an abyss, though, like it's suspended.
Yeah.
This.
And it looks like, well, I get a cross. There's maybe some Christian theme here because of this going down and the 2 arms across. And looks like the breasts, nipples here. It could be some suggestion of Christ on the cross, legs came to me. But there's these desiccated steer heads that she paints. To me, it's like almost a soul essence. It's like all the flesh is gone, but there's something essential, and it's white, pure, that remains, that doesn't die. And it just, it's almost like when your body dies, there's something pure white that remains. And I think she was maybe getting that. She says, I don't think of death when I paint these, even though they're skulls. They are
The transformation.
Yeah, to me, it's like something eternal that lives on in these that she was painting as that's where I go. She may not have consciously thought that. She said, I'm going to paint this form. I'm drawn to them, and then you can free associate on that. Okay. And she also often will have a flower right next to her. See if I can find one. Yeah, here you go. Cow skull with calico roses. And this is in an abstract landscape. So these white beautiful roses and also the way of the skull. She's bringing these two, juxtaposing them, and with this black line right through the middle. And any thought? I mean, look at that. What thoughts or feelings come to you as you're looking at this?
I don't know, death and a wedding.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe there's something about that that's connected. Wedding is some women feel that getting married is like a death. there's something the end of something for them and the beginning. Yeah. Okay. Life and death are one thing, you know.
It's interesting that black space between the two white, whatever they are.
And that draws your eye just from a compositional point of view. And here's this little bit of brown, orangey brown here. And here's where the, aside from black and white, some shades of gray here in the petals, but the only different colors right here. So the eye is going to go up this way, maybe follow around, spend a little time here, go up here, and there's the skull is split right in half. It's got a crack in it. Maybe I think I'll go over here, spin a little ways, or maybe go.
The flower is artificial. It's not a real flower. It's artificial.
How do you know?
I can tell.
Oh, okay. So maybe she was painting.
It's flowers
there are white roses.
Decorations for weddings.
Oh, okay. And then you just continue up on out of the, yeah. It doesn't look like a real flower, right? So that's a good point. She's juxtaposing an artificial flower with this, with the skull. Why is she doing that? Something about weddings, maybe. Yeah, maybe you'd be thinking weddings. And, hitting you with different possible interpretations. There's no one interpretation, but it's going to. Her paintings are evocative. They evoke certain feelings and associations that are multiple, and I think that's one of the reasons people like her. You know, it's like it's not one thing. Let's look at a. You did this really cool painting called the Lawrence Tree.
Isn't it remarkable what?
I'm gonna find it bigger. Nope. That's. Why did I do that? All right, try it again.
We're in the remarkable Wadsworth Athenaeum in Hartford, Connecticut, and we're looking at Georgia O'Keeffe's The Lawrence Tree. It's a really early O'Keeffe. It dates to 1929.
It doesn't look like a tree at all. It looks almost like this organic, octopus-like form, but when you just stop for a second and look at it, you can see that we're looking up at the branches of a tree, like we often do when we're lying on the grass and looking up at the sky.
And we always take over the artist's view, in a sense, when we look at a painting. But because the view is so unusual here, in some ways we really inhabit her eyes as she's looking up at that clear night sky.
There's something incredibly poignant about it. We become her, or we see through her eyes at a very particular moment, in a very particular view, on a very particular night. I have a strong sense of the passage of time and the momentary, and how human life is so brief. A whole set of things that happen because of this unusual point of view, looking up through the tree at the night sky. The subject and the point of view come together. I almost feel the nighttime and this tree and the smell of the pine.
Space and time are beautifully interwoven. Our eye travels up that trunk. We're lying just below. O'Keeffe spoke about how there was a carpenter's bench just at the base of this tree that she liked to lie on. This was painted on D.H. Lawrence's ranch during her first summer in New Mexico. There's something very particular about the way our eye travels up the tree and then past this cloud-like form that are the needles of the pine, and then beyond that, the sky, which intrudes and comes towards us and, of course, recedes infinitely in the dome of that sky. The radical changes of scale speak of both space and time, our minuteness and our rootedness in this much larger celestial space.
There is that pulling down and that sense of rootedness in the earth, and at the same time that sublime suggestion of the infinite. And the blue and the way that it pierces through that haze.
Yes. Apparently the artist felt that this painting could be hung in any direction, but the museum has hung it in a way that she seemed to have preferred.
She instructed that the tree appear to be standing on its head.
Bird.
Yeah, so I'm reminded of Van Gogh's Starry Night and how he did it. It's just like her Starry Night. Any thoughts on this painting? Any observations before we move on?
Yeah, it's very cool. Color red for the trunk.
Yeah, red and green. So she's using complementary colors.
Is that green? Because
Yeah,
it looks kind of
this is a muted green. This is all muted green. So
looks like a burgundy on my screen.
Oh, really? So no, it's a grayish green, a little bit more green here as a complement to the red. Again, a color will jump out more when it's back, when it's surrounded by a muted version of its complement. So yeah, no one had ever done this before. Yeah, painted. And how many of us have maybe done this? I've done this, laid at the base of a tree and looked up, but never thought to paint that view. And it's done extremely well. And
Yeah.
red is a life force. It's a vital blood. It's like a blood energy that's rushing up and vitalizing it. And it's also rushing up the tree, but it also seems to be coming down. It's like these tendrils are reaching up into space and drawing on blood and bringing it back down. Someone's going to say something.
I said it kind of reminds me of the Kundalini energy too, which it rises and it's red and.
Yeah. So I think we're getting at again. She's tapping in her own way into getting at some primal, sacred energies that are there in the world and universe, and that these, like Van Gogh and like others, like these objects we see there's a divine quality to them. If we just get down to the essence of it, try to paint to the essence and use that as a.
What tree?
Pardon?
What's the name of it?
The Lawrence tree. It's the name of this
Lawrence.
Lawrence. It's D.H. Lawrence's farm. That's why.
Ah.
Yeah, our branch. I mean. So let's see. Let's look at this.
The American painter Georgia O'Keeffe is probably best known for her paintings of flowers or the photographs of her as a nude model. Well, this new exhibition at Tate Modern aims to explode the myths around O'Keeffe as a painter of feminine subjects, and instead shows her to be one of the most pioneering artists of the 20th century.
This is a fantastic and rare opportunity to see O'Keeffe's work, as not one of her paintings is currently held in a British public collection. The show marks a centenary since her debut in New York in 1916 and brings together more than 100 of her artworks from all over the world.
For many people, this is going to be the star of the show. It's called Jimson Weed, White Flower No. 1, and it was painted in 1932. For me, it's an incredible example of O'Keeffe's ability to take something really ordinary, in this case a simple nightshade flower, and transform it through an epic change of scale and really close looking into something extraordinary and beguiling. It's also famous because this picture sold just a couple of years ago for more than $44 million, making it the single most expensive picture by a woman artist ever sold at auction.
Born in 1887 to dairy farmers in rural Wisconsin, O'Keeffe resolved to be an artist at just 10 years old. A local watercolourist first taught her to paint before she went on to study at the Chicago Institute of Art. In 1916, she showed her work in a group exhibition at Gallery 291 in New York, whose owner was the avant-garde photographer Alfred Stieglitz. The two became lovers and collaborators, but as well as being his muse, O'Keeffe quickly forged her own unique path.
This is a really wonderful example of one of her early radical paintings, because while abstraction had taken hold in Europe a decade or two earlier, this was something really fresh for New York. It's called Blue and Green Music, and you can feel in it O'Keeffe paring back as if to get at the essence of something, the essence of a feeling. As she said, it's only by elimination and by emphasis that we get at the real meaning of things.
Although famous for her flower paintings, this exhibition shows that they were only a small fraction of O'Keeffe's work. She experimented with a huge range of subject matter and was always inspired by the landscapes and nature around her.
The American Southwest would have a huge impact on O'Keeffe's work. Its rugged landscapes, vivid orange earth and bleak desert terrain were the perfect escape for her as she sought physical and psychological freedom. And when you look at the rich colours in a picture like this, I think you start to see why, despite the incredibly hard conditions, the ceaseless wind and sun, New Mexico had such a powerful draw for O'Keeffe. One unexpected and really exciting aspect of this show for me is O'Keeffe's late, strange, almost ethereal abstracts. This one seems to show a sea of clouds, as if seen perhaps from an aeroplane from above, and it transforms them into a fantastical landscape of the imagination.
She was flying around the world, and she was fascinated by the cloud patterns, looking out the airplane's window from 35,000 feet. And she did a whole series of paintings looking down on clouds. This is one.
For nearly 70 years, Georgia O'Keeffe made profound, surprising, and innovative artworks that pushed the boundaries of looking and painting. Many of her most celebrated works, from swirling flowers to beautiful abstractions, are on show.
This exhibition shows us so much more than the myths about Georgia O'Keeffe, and it argues convincingly for her place in the canon of 20th century art. Do come and see it for yourself.
Should we stay with her, with Georgia? I mean, we don't have to do Eva Hess. I don't want to feel like we got to rush through Georgia because we can keep looking at her paintings. Is that okay with everybody?
That's totally good.
Yeah, okay. So let's look at some of these short videos I have. Then we'll go back to look at her paintings because there's more. And we'll maybe get to Eva next time. I always tend to over-prepare, but it's good.
When I got to New Mexico, that was mine. As soon as I saw it, that was my country. I had never seen anything like it before, but it fitted to me exactly. There's something in the air. It's just different. The sky is different. The stars are different. The wind is different.
Everyone's got their...
I shouldn't say too much about this because other people may get interested, and I don't want them interested. And I wondered what I could take home that I could continue what I felt about the country, and I couldn't think of anything to take home but a barrel of bones. The bones do not symbolize death to me. They are shapes that I enjoy. It never occurs to me that they have anything to do with death. They are very lively. They please me. And I have enjoyed them very much in relation to the sky. I remember talking with a little girl, and I even remember her name, Lena Buchholz. And I said, Lena, what are you going to do when you grow up? Well, she didn't know. Well, I said, I'm going to be a painter. I have been very fortunate, much more fortunate than most people. I don't think, for instance, I can imagine myself being a much better painter and nobody paying any attention to me at all. But it happens that the thing that I have done, the things that I've been doing have been in touch with my time so that people have liked it. But I could have been much better and nobody noticed it. Much better, I'll say, as a painter. You see, a painter is one thing and a person, in a way, is another thing. Some people seem to be luckier than others. I don't know, maybe it's because I've taken hold of anything that came along that I wanted.
Wow, look at that house. Is that the museum?
On this knife, I might fall off on either side, but I'd walk it again. So what? What if you do fall off? I'd rather be doing something I really wanted to do.
So the museum is designed like the architecture of a painting.
Sorry about that. I had enabled calls on my computer. Mistake.
All right, slap you on the wrist.
Joe,
Yeah.
somebody had asked before about the museum and the paintings, and I just realized looking at that, you know, Ghost Ranch is not.
Go ahead. I can't hear you now. You were in mid-sentence. You got cut off.
The museum is in Santa Fe.
Oh, okay. That's what we were looking at.
And where she lived and painted was at the Ghost Ranch.
Right. Okay.
So most of her paintings were in the museum, and the Ghost Ranch was a tour, a visit of where she lived and where she painted.
Right. That museum looks beautiful. The architecture.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's beautiful design.
The cliffs over there, you look at it and it's almost painted for you, you think, until you try. I tried to paint what I saw. I had it in my head when I couldn't have been 12. I was going to be a painter.
The Gesamtkunstwerk. I dreamed up this term for O'Keeffe when I was trying to find something that said it in a word. Georgia O'Keeffe had one style in everything in her life. Her living environments, clothes, paintings, everything she touched was made up of this aesthetic.
Stieglitz had the only modern things that you could go to see. He had the first Picassos.
Stieglitz introduced her to the modernist languages of Europe. O'Keeffe, very early on, had a reputation that Stieglitz helped her build. Critics knew her, museum curators knew of her art. And what he most wanted to promote was O'Keeffe as a superhuman being, like he thought all artists were that were any good. When, on occasion, O'Keeffe was asked about him, she might say something like, well, he was difficult to live with, but he was a great photographer. He began his 20-year portrait of her, some 300 pictures. Of course, they fell in love with one another.
What made it work so well for so long?
I was interested in what he did, and he was interested in what I did. Very interested. They are both willing to express their love and affection and their intimate lovemaking in words, in letters to one another. So we have this extraordinary correspondence. Her first subject matter was flowers, and Stieglitz gendered them in very public terms. And then, of course, he began to see all kinds of female body parts in these flowers, and she got very annoyed. One of her strategies to get out of the gender box was to stop painting flowers for a while and take on the subject of modern New York. I think New York is modern New York.
Wait a second. That painting is,
Gender box was to stop.
that's an amazing painting. That's just incredible. It pulls you in so many different ways. And yeah, to me, it's almost like a black hole in space too.
Yeah.
All kinds of suggestive implications. That the microcosm and the macrocosm are one. You know, it's like wow. Yeah. Okay. Very different. You know, to perceive that she's. You know, but she never verbalized her mystical beliefs or anything. You know, she just did it. So it wasn't she was trying to paint a philosophy or I want to paint spiritual paintings. She wasn't. I never got that from anything she said. Though not that I read a lot by her, but I haven't heard anyone.
Have their letters been published, or is that?
Yeah, they have. I haven't read them, but they have been. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or well, wait a minute, 25,000 pages. I don't know. I guess maybe condensed version. Of them. Yeah.
Painting flowers for a while and take on the subject of modern New York. I think New York is wonderful. It's like a dream.
And if you get up high enough, you can see the river on both sides. And at that time, not many people lived up high like we did, so everyone came to see us.
And when she told Stieglitz she was going to do that, he famously said,
What are you going to paint New York for anyway? You can't do that. The men haven't even done very well with it. What do you think you're going to do?
She definitely knew she was in a man's world. She wanted to escape the woman artist label.
In New York, I painted in the studio. Well, in New Mexico, I painted out in my car most of the time.
It was nice of Stieglitz to let you go to New Mexico every summer.
Oh, listen, he didn't let me go. I just went. One's work naturally changes when one lives in different places.
That I get this shape in my head, and sometimes I know what it comes from and sometimes I don't. There was a great diversity of ways in which women could start having different kinds of lives than their mothers and aunts had had. And O'Keeffe was one of those. She did perform as a suffragist, but the way she made herself as an independent, career-striving woman was more important to her than going to rallies or supporting various causes. She would just do things her way.
When you get out here, you hardly need a tube of green paint in your box. In the Ghost Ranch country, we had to have the red earth and the yellow earth. got down deep enough into the ground, you got to the purple earth. You looked out at the cliffs and you thought that just would be no job at all. You just put down what you saw and you'd have a good painting. But I found it didn't quite work that way. The bones are shapes that I enjoy. It never occurs to me that they have anything to do with death. They are very lively.
She was somebody who expressed the ineffable in life. There was no difference in her mind between art and life.
Some people seem to be luckier than others. I have been very fortunate. I don't know, maybe it's because I've taken hold of anything that came along that I wanted.
She had to be in control of her environment. She always arranged furniture so that there was as little of it as possible and that it was not jarring, that it was all one color.
I like to have a plain wall. I don't want to be reminded of the same thing every time I look at the wall.
That style of understatement, that style of abstraction could be found in the way she put clothes on her body. She was one of the first artists to decide that black was her color and exclusively wore black and white whenever she was in public. When she set the table, she did it in the same way that she placed chairs in her living spaces, and she did something very similar when she tackled a canvas.
The ghost house was the oldest house on the place over there. However, the ghost in the ghost house never came out for me. I'll be 90 in a few months. Well, think of that, I'll be 90. You have to use your body to keep it alive. Keep on exercising, keep on using your body. Oh, it's a especially fine place to climb around it.
Have you climbed over these
Oh,
hills?
certainly. Wouldn't you? Wouldn't you climb if you were here?
There you go. Let's go back to our paintings.
That was good.
Yeah. So we stay with our paintings now? Everybody okay with that?
Uh-huh.
The rest of the time? And yeah, that helps to get a little biographical background and context. I'll tell you what, say, scream, shout out if you want me to stop at one. This looks like an interesting one because it has colors she doesn't usually use. Autumn leaves. And autumn, this must be a New York influence painting because it's not going to happen like this in New Mexico.
Well, that's pretty.
Hmm. Yeah, it's, you know, the fire of autumn. A little bit green left, not much, but like a flame shooting up. And I like the way she, like, leaf patterns have been, like I said, highly abstracted into like canyons. Yeah, like the canyons you see in New Mexico.
Amazing colors.
Yeah.
Wow, I want that.
I like this painting too. So this is, okay, Autumn, Lake George. Yeah, 1924. Let's see. Black iris. That looks like an interesting one. Someone was going to say something?
I was going to say, I want to recruit Cheryl for our art class before the session's over.
Oh, sure. So this is black iris. Yeah.
Wow.
It's yeah, inviting you into the nothingness, right? The everything nothing. Here's the nothing.
Yeah, everything in there.
Right? Are you willing to go? I bet most people would be afraid to stand there for too long. They'll take their selfie and it's like keep walking, but they're not going to stand there and get lost in this space. Anish, the sculptor, will cover him soon, who I really like. It's an Indian man who lives in London, really well-known sculptor, Anish Kapoor. He does things like this with soft sculpture. I stumbled on him in DC. I forget the name of the museum there. It was a soft sculpture like this, and it just went, and it went inward like a black hole. And you just sit there, and your eye kept adjusting to the subtleties of the blackness, and adjusting and adjusting, and just I could see it wasn't just a monochromic black. It had so many subtleties of shades. That the way he did this, the way he did that, it just held my gaze. I couldn't stop. I just wanted to dive in. But I noticed most people, they couldn't. They just walked right by it. They didn't get it. Or if I moved aside, no one else did that. You got to be.
Do you have it? Do you have a picture of it?
I don't have it offhand. I could probably find it in his collected works somewhere online. Yeah, or if I find it, I'll send it around. But I bet if you stand in front of this, again, the photograph isn't going to do the subtleties of this blackness. It's not just black, you know. So you can see it. You get a hint of it, the subtle shadings. So you do that with paint. You gotta layer it. You gotta use one and to create that depth. I bet she did that. Yeah, and like it's like you're a bee. You know, bees get drawn into the right to pollinate, collect the pollen or pollinate a flower. So it's almost the other thing is you're getting a bee's eyes perspective, I think, of a flower. You know, and it pulls you in. Yeah, there's some sexual references, but sex has a powerful, intriguing inward pull, but it's has more metaphysical implications than just pleasure, you know.
To me, I just don't even think of sexuality here. It's this organic movement of life.
Yes.
You know, you're talking about the black in the center. My eyes just keep bouncing outwards, up to the whites and down to the blacks and then back up to the whites. I'm making a generalization. It's not white. It's grays and pinks and mauves and, blues. And it's just extraordinary. Actually, I started crying right now when I first saw this. I have never seen this painting. It just blew me away. It's so beautiful.
A little bit like a tree trunk that splits at the bottom.
Yeah, sort of like the heavens embracing the earth and the earth reaching up. You know, out of darkness again, I keep thinking came light. This whole generative life force.
Yeah, that's cool.
And one of the things you showed before, or they showed in one of the films you just showed, the undulations of different flower shapes are like the undulations of clouds in the distance in some of her landscapes, and the movement of the earth. I mean, it's just incredible.
That is a beautiful way of looking at this, the divine and the human coming together, merging where the two seas meet, they say, or where.
Well, look at the reaching down of the white tendrils and the reaching up of the black, and then the blossoming out of both of them to the sides. Expanding out, billowing leaves. It's just phenomenal.
That's a mystical vision for sure, and it's just so humble about it. She didn't, sometimes it's better left unsaid. Like they get it something. The more you talk about it, maybe them. She just did it. She had an eye. She had an eye for this underlying forces, universal forces in nature. Yep.
Wow.
This one's cool. This is, you know, there's a masculine principle to flowers too.
It's 3:30.
Thank you. What's it say here? What is my experience of the flower, if not color? The large-scale images of two calla lilies made of broad, sweeping waves of subtly blended hues are an extraordinary example of her floral paintings. The white petals, highlighting green and penetrated by two bright yellow pistils, reach outward against a pink backdrop, set off by dark green stems. The artist abstracted floral studies from the 20s had strong sexual overtones, though she denied this was her intention. But my point is, so what if they do? Does that mean you understand it? No. Just say, oh, this reminds me of that. You know, it's like, that's...
Joe, you know, to me, and I'm just reminded of the museum visit I had, it's a visceral experience.
Yeah.
Any of you can go see her paintings in person, do it. Oh my God.
Yeah, so if you can say that about a painter, they've, the power of art, if they hit you in the gut like that, they've succeeded, you know? And, you know, it's interesting, she alternated, like the New York paintings are very straight, a lot of straight lines and geometry, just angular geometry, and she could do that well. And then here she's doing these fluid flowing, like molten, like the life force is molten into line, like lava, green lava, as it were, you know, prawn energy flowing. And the very subtle shading. It's also like the subtle shading of fabric or someone wearing a cloak, a garment, the way that might be painted, like a white garment. So it's very, very subtle. Yeah. It has a, for me, it has a very soothing quality too. Effect on me, right? Just very soothing. Any other comments about this before I move on to this one? Where's the bottom of it there? Oh yeah, she likes to put, I notice a lot of paintings, she'll have this black, various proportions. So, you know, you'll get this, either a black hole, circular form, or a black bar.
Yeah, also, you know, she's showing only part of the flower.
Yeah, well, the close-up, the zoom in, the cropping, yeah. The bee's eyes view, you know. So, you wonder why no one else had done that before, artists, you know. What's his name, Drawer did that, we looked at his, he painted a little patch of grass with, he got, it was like he was doing a stomach painting, and that's like the closest thing since then. You know, but she zoomed in even more to just one or two flowers. All right. So it looks like she did clothing design too. I mean, there's all right, here she's really emphasizing the different dimensions of black.
Black is the all colors, right? Rather than absence of color? Or is that white?
White is all color. Actually, you know, they say there's no such thing as black in nature, pure black. It's always, and they advise if you're doing a landscape painting not to use black out of a tube, to mix a dark black, like green, certain dark greens, dark blues, phthalo blue, and a red, and you'll get a nice deep dark color, which is organic black, but not.
Yeah.
But for an abstract painting, you can use pure black out of a tube, ivory black, or whatever. It just depends. But it's black does not that pure essence of black does not exist in nature. There's always some color.
So black does not exist in nature. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, no, no. Um, no, even in the deepest shadow, I don't know, maybe, well, I'm saying that even out in space, if you looked out, could you find a place where there's no starlight? I don't know.
Or a black ant, or like, any of these black creatures. The
The trouble is
pupillary eye.
black reflects, like black is a reflecting color. It will reflect certain colors, so you'll see those colors on the surface. But I mean, it absorbs color, but it also reflects some color. That's why you don't want black car. It's hard to have a black car in this climate because it's absorbing heat, and white reflects. But still, there's some reflection off a black surface, and then you'll see some hints of color.
So what is this?
But maybe you have to be in a completely colorless room, I guess. If you can do that, then there would be no color. Yeah. So I don't know. This suggests some mountains, snow-clad mountains in the background, flower forms, some kind of maybe water flowing through the canyon.
I think it's like a underground.
Could be underground. Could be these. Could be the sides. It could be any. Lots of different things you could project on it. It's like a Rorschach in a way. Yeah. I see sex. Yeah. Okay. Right. What? I see my mother trying to kill me. I want to kill my mother when I look at this. I see my father wanting to kill my mother. Right. These are two breasts. All right, so she was playing with black and shades of green.
What is this painting called?
Black Place. Maybe she painted it when she was in that psychiatric hospital for a few months. She was in a black place. I wouldn't be surprised. That's when she painted that. Yeah. This is, this one, she and the Tate, the British woman commenting on this painting. It's music, because there's such a blue, is that what's called blue and green music? Yeah. So here she juxtaposes these straight lines with hard edges, 3 of them, green, light green, and it kind of a violet edge here to the, which almost black. And then over here too, these piercing, and then these flowing structures, wave-like forms.
Yeah, it's very organic, like Cheryl. It's organic, it's kind of a fiber or something. Or
yeah. And the painting pulls me in 2 different directions. I mean, there's a downward thrust from these triangles and bars, and this is either flowing down or up. But this can be seen as flowing up, but also down. So it almost reverses itself. It's doing 2 things at once, actually, to me. It's a pulling me down inward, and also pulling out. It's a contraction and expansion simultaneously, which is a really interesting composition for that ability to do that. You can almost be like you're standing on top of the Empire State Building or a tall building looking down, and then, or maybe laying at the base of that tree, and it's just even more abstracted. This trunk shooting up into space. So complex. Like that's the other thing. If you stay with and stay with the compositional flow, it's doing more than one thing at once. Yep. And like she said there, yeah, you see those cliffs in the distance. You want to paint them. Good luck. Probably to paint them the way she, unique original way is not easy. We looked at that one. From Far Away Nearby. That's a good title, From Far Away Nearby. 1937. All right, there's the far away, and yet this rack of a steer is right in your face. Any thoughts on this?
It's like a blurring the concept of near and far, and
Yeah.
you know, just
And you know, if you've been to out to the Southwest,
yeah, man.
you have that experience actually.
I lived there for 2 years.
Where did you live?
Arizona,
Where?
Phoenix, but went out in the desert a lot.
Yeah, me too. I lived in Tucson for 2 years. So I know that there is that.
What years?
82 to 84.
All right, before my time.
Yeah, I lived in Tucson. But it's true, you go out in the desert and there's a, because of the heat or the vista, it's a combination of things. So it'll distort your sense of space. Yeah. That's why people go off the path. They go, oh, I think I'll walk a little way. I want to capture it. I want to get that thing. And then 2 days later, they're dead. they get lost. It's real easy to get disoriented. And you think, I'll just walk over there. It's like, what, a quarter mile? Yeah, and then suddenly, where am I? It's like you lose all sense. And then they start wandering off in the wrong direction. They didn't bring water with them. And it does not take long.
One time I went for a walk in the Camelback Mountains.
Yeah.
And it was supposed to be just a 20-minute walk.
I know.
5 hours later, no water. Literally, I ended up on the other side of the mountain and had to get a ride back to my car.
You went 5 hours without water.
5 hours.
You're lucky you're here to just talk about it.
I was a mad woman back then.
So, I mean, when you read about, so it's real easy to get disoriented quickly out there. And also, if you've driven through Utah at night or those west of the Rockies, you see a light coming towards you, a headlight, and it's an hour before you pass each other. So you're seeing the light 60 to 80. He's probably gone more than 80 miles in the distance, and it can get very disorienting. Like one road, I remember it was alongside a railroad track, and the train's coming at me, and I couldn't tell. Am I on the track? Am I about to get squashed by a train? You know, it's because it's taking so long to come, and when the train passes, there's a sense of relief because I thought he's coming right at me. I'm on the train track, and you want to slam on the brake and jump out of the car. So, yeah, so she's playing with that near and far perspective. Jack in the Pulpit, that looks like an interesting one. Lots of blacks and greens. Whoa. This seems a little contrived. I don't know, like man-made or something. But maybe that's what it looks like up close. I don't know. Looks like a man-made curved doorway. A little bit too contrived or too obvious, the pathway in for me. But yeah, not one of my favorites at first. She did that ladder. It's interesting. Remember that scene of the ladder leaning against her adobe home on the outside? I guess if you're looking at the foot of the ladder and looking up into the sky, so ladder to the moon, she did that. It's one of her kind of a surrealistic painting, Stairway to Heaven. Others, some say it's a religious painting, the link between Pueblos and the cosmic forces. You know, it also has a reference to the kivas of the Navajos. They had ladders that you went down the ladder into the sacred space. Anybody ever see those? if you're out in Arizona. Yeah. And you see ladders all over. These ladders built Chaco Canyon, these dwellings in a cliff. And, you know, they were, when they discovered those 100 years ago, there's still food in the bowls. It didn't deteriorate because of the lack of humidity. But these different levels are connected by ladders. So she may have seen that and used it as an image for painting. But it's okay. It's probably not one of her best. But let's go over this side. Masterpieces. These are just kind of guess. Let's see. Where to the moon. Red hills and white shells. I wish they had arrows you could click on and they just go from one painting to the next. Or do they? No, not that way. You gotta go back. That's interesting, the Nautilus Shell. That's a seashell, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, in Mexico, that's a juxtaposition. Yeah. And it's similar to the white of the steer skull. You know, it's a shell. There's something, you know, soul essence quality to it.
It's like you know, like a fetus or infant or somebody like curled up in a cave.
Yeah, I can see that. The royal red, you know, and the red's kind of bleeding into the shell or reflected off the surface.
In the womb.
Yeah, blood. Who would think of blood? That's a good point. Like a fetus. Yeah, that's good. Embryo. Yeah. So there's a life force suggestion here. This is very vital. The golden bar across the top and the red, more red. Yeah, I like that way of looking at it. But again, you got to just stand in front of it, and that's one association. You know, you can get pulled into this golden triangle type of flow. Keeps going around and around. Life and death, birth, male, female. Crucifixion. We looked at that one. I didn't want to go to the other ones.
Go back a few. I wonder if Pink Floyd didn't get their image from that.
From one of these?
Keep coming down.
Pink Floyd. I probably wouldn't be surprised.
There.
This one?
No, go back one.
Oh, this Black Cross? That one? Is that on like the cover of one of their albums? Guma or Dark Side of the Moon?
It's gorgeous.
Yeah, that's powerful. It's like, wow. It's even more powerful than Jesus actually being on the cross, you know?
Yeah.
Because you can project into that black space whatever you want, right? They say life coming into a body is like the cross. It's your suffering. You're nailed to the cross when you take on a physical form, in between lifetimes, when we incarnate. You know, we're nailed to the cross of existence, physical existence. There's that. And these seem to be hills. Yeah. This hill's flowing off, and there's that golden bar of light and red. What's it? Yeah, this is a powerful painting. And it's amazing, it's mostly black.
What makes it pop is that yellow and red.
Yeah, and the yellow and red, yeah, exactly.
The horizon.
And these are the most saturated colors, of yellow and red. And well, the black saturated black, but non-black, this, you know. And it's just a very small amount of painting is saturated color. Everything else is muted down. I just did a painting like that. Just that one little bar of red. The rest of it is
Fabulous.
neutral white, kind of whitish color.
You know, sunrise or sunset. It's like so powerful at that moment.
Yeah, that's right. Is it a sunrise or a sunset? And the risen Christ, you know. This will make it great. I'm going to see this painting in a church. Really powerful. A large version of it. Oh, I know. It's going back to these other, I think, masterpieces. Let's see. Yellow color. Whoa. She says, everyone has many associations with a flower. You put out your hand to touch it, or lean forward to smell it, or maybe touch it with your lips, almost without thinking, or give it to someone to please them. But one rarely takes the time to really see a flower. I have painted what each flower is to me, and I painted it big enough so that others would see what I would see. Yeah. Cool. So this is, I guess, this is just a pedal, and a pistol. What's it called? So I think, you know, for me, their paintings are mystical, as mystical as Van Gogh's, or and done in her own unique style. He loaded the painting on and repetitive strokes, and she used a much more, did much more blending, subtle blending. And it looks like she layered paints. She layered the colors in places to get that. So you're using a fine, to blend like this, you're using like maybe a wide, a fan type brush. It's called a fan to get the blending. Blending and blending in. And just if you talk about values, from bright white to like how many values does she have? How many values would you say you see in this? Say if dark is on one side, white is the other, and there's somewhere middle grays. How many values do you think you would see in this? 3, 4, 5. What do you think?
4, 5.
All right. Name. Let's say with 4. Name the 4. What do you see?
Well, the very light.
All right. So this would be the whitest, bright white value here and here.
Very black.
That's 2. Yeah. There's here. This suggests black. Not very much. Yeah. Very black.
And then the middle values are the greens and yellows.
Yeah. So they're all somewhere in the middle. She's pretty consistent with a mid-tone, 4 or 5. You could probably even say there's 3 values. You say all the green yellow is probably one value range, and maybe this part here would be towards. If this is a 5, this might be a 6, and then the 2 extremes of white. But simplifying the number of values in the painting, keeping them relatively small, 3 to 4 values, makes it more harmonious, makes it work better. and then having one that predominates. So the middle values definitely predominate in this. The yellow greens. The second amount would be the whites, and there's some middle. This middle gray is similar actually in value to the yellow green, even though they're different colors. And then the third, in terms of proportion, is black, the dark, 9 or 10s. Yeah. Does she do that consciously? Probably. You learn it in school, and then it just becomes automatic. Let's look at one more. Then we'll look at some quotes of hers. I don't know. Oriental poppies. Let's see. Ooh. Let's see what it says about it. All right, just kind of comments on that. Oriental poppies. Just, what do you see?
I just sometimes see her so much working in contrasts. You know, just again, this explosive color and vibrancy and just pulling you in. And right now, almost the black is pushing me away. This tension in color. I noticed that a couple of times before, but I wouldn't have said it that way. I mean, earlier that things you showed. But again, there's so much discreetness and yet subtlety at the same time.
Right.
The edging of the middle part of where the two flowers meet the petals, and yet so much of it is so subtle and blended. It just, again, it's extraordinary to me how gifted she was. I'm sorry?
You know, there's a way to do this with one brush stroke. And there's people that actually do it commercially. The more you work at you can get the brush to create this effect with one sweep of the brush. I'll show you someone at some point. I'll show you someone. There's a woman on that does it, and she creates these flowers that are amazingly subtle and blended with just moving her brush like very slowly, just one sweep of the brush, and she's got it. So. But to do that, it's like a Japanese calligraphy. It takes a great deal of skill to learn that sweep and to get it right, and to turn the brush just so. And how to load the brush. You can load a brush with more than one color. If you were to load red on one side and yellowish on the other, and white, and then you have them blend as you're sweeping the brush, rather than blending it one little stroke at a time. I don't know how Georgia worked, but it is possible to how to create this subtle flower effect with just one sweep of the brush. It's loaded properly. Yeah, it's interesting the duality here. It's like there's like they're communicating. It's like they're lovers in a way. Male, female. I don't know. Two flowers nuzzling up against each other, creating this soft space where they touch. There's like almost like two beings making love, like touching their bodies together and pressing. It's kind of like, and there's that for me. Yin and yang, the duality. Or is this a mirror image? This could be a mirror image. This could be like a reflection in water, even of this. One possibility. Two becoming one. The flame of love. This is like a flame that's coming out. There's associations I have. It's like flames. And coming out of these black holes. Yeah. I like that painting. So it's interesting how she would work in these subtle greens, but then go to these orange reds, and always keeping some black. Always some black in her painting. Something about that. Some quotes. Look at some of her quotes. Anyone who doesn't feel the crosses simply doesn't get that country. That's interesting. I believe I would rather have Stieglitz like something, anything I had done, like something, anything I had done than anyone else I know. She really idolized her.
4 o'clock.
Yeah. I decided that if I could paint that flower in a huge scale, you could not ignore its beauty.
Exactly.
I don't very much enjoy looking at paintings in general. I know too much about them. I take them apart. I feel there's something unexplored about woman, to be plural, I mean, that only a woman can explore. One small step for man, one large giant step for mankind. That quote is actually incorrect grammar. It should be one small step for a man, one giant step for mankind. Because it means the same thing. One small step for man means mankind, and he didn't want to say the same thing. He wanted to say one small step for a man, me, meaning, and then one giant step for mankind. I found I could say things with color and shape so they couldn't say any other way. Things I have no words for. Yeah. And that's interesting. I hate flowers. I paint them because they're cheaper than models and they don't move. I'm sure that's tongue in cheek. I have things in my head that are not like what anyone has taught me. Shapes and ideas so near to me, so natural to my way of being and thinking that it hasn't occurred to me to put them down. I now know that most people are so closely concerned with themselves that they are not aware of their own individuality. I can see myself, and it has helped me to say what I want to say in paint.
Wow.
I often painted fragments of things because it seemed to make my statement as well as or better than the whole could. Yeah, that's a Japanese aesthetic. You paint a part of something and you hide the rest. The part suggests the whole. For instance, if you put some worn out Van Gogh's worn out shoes on a step, you know that shoe is a part, and yet it's worn out. It's been worn. It's been lived in and walked countless miles, and it's a symbol for that person's whole life. You know, so the fragment has the whole. It's like a hologram. It was in the 1920s that nobody had time to reflect, that I saw a still life painting with a flower that was perfectly exquisite, but so small you really could not appreciate it. One can't paint in New York as it is, but rather as it is felt.
Oh my God.
You like that one?
Exactly.
How
it feels.
To create one's world in any of the arts takes courage. Yeah. When you take a flower in your hand and really look at it, it's your world for the moment. I want to give that world to someone else. Most people in the city rush around, so they have no time to look at a flower. I want them to see it, whether they want to or not. And put it in your face. All right, that's Georgia O'Keeffe, wonderful painter. And we didn't get to Eva Hess. We'll do her next time. Eva Hess, and I'm not sure who other. I want to do. I would like to do. What's his name? The guy who did the Campbell soup cans.
Andy Warhol.
Andy Warhol. There's a good we'll watch a documentary by that young British guy who does really good. Who did the other ones. We'll watch it. We'll do Andy Warhol and we'll do Eva Hess next time. So, Jim, yeah?
Yeah, you promised Frida Kahlo to somebody.
Kahlo. I haven't forgotten about her. We'll get to Frida Kahlo, definitely. And there's also the that New York painter who started off doing graffiti. Anybody familiar with Jean-Michel Basquiat?
Heard of it.
He was a phenom. He died of overdose of drugs, but he started off as a graffiti artist, and then he started painting. It's just remarkably talented. He accomplished he just got to the head of the New York art world in a couple years, and his stuff goes for millions now. And he's just self-taught. Yeah, so he's a fascinating person to know about. And Andy and Jean-Michel Basquiat knew each other, and Andy was influenced by him. Yeah. Okay, so there we go. That was good. Yes.
Two things
Okay.
before we close, if I may. One, I promised you I read you my poem about seeing the light.
Oh, cool. Okay.
In the flower. Second, I was wondering if Cheryl might be interested in our art class. Joe and I have been talking about starting a painting class at the Physical Circle. So I thought I'd throw that out at you.
I told her if she can get 4 people to come, I'll do a class. So there you go. So
what kind of timing? And I haven't heard about this before. What kind of timing are you talking about? What days or hours?
Haven't got decided.
We're still looking to see
2 hours, maybe 2 hours once a week. I should do it once a week. If I'm do it.
Once a week. Yeah.
2 hours once a
Yeah,
week.
I'd be interested, just depending on what timing you picked.
Could you?
Do you have a preference, Cheryl?
Maybe the middle of the day.
That works.
You have each other's email?
Yeah.
I'm fresh the coordinator. Okay, then let me know.
Okay.
So
that's 2. I have 2 more to go.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
All right.
Keep asking. Okay. All right. Your poem. Let's hear it.
It's called Flower and Ant.
Okay.
It is his light vibrating everywhere, shaping into colors and forms, into sounds, into life. It is his sea of color and light appearing solid in seductive patterns as flower, as ant. It is his love you see manifesting as color and light. When you gaze deeply into the heart of a flower and open your own heart, you might just catch a fleeting glimpse of that beautiful light.
Wow. Nice.
September 24th, 2001.
Beautiful. So I'm sure you would have liked that. That pictures the.
In large part, that just describes what we've been seeing in my.
I know, right?
So that's a nice flower poem. Flower that captures what she's doing. Yeah. Okay, folks, great. So we'll just stay with contemporary painters, right? Maybe we'll do Rembrandt sometime. But everybody happy with staying? There's so many of them that are really interesting.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
No, it sounds like you can go on forever. I hope we all stay alive for.
Yeah, I know. There's so many. There's so many interesting contemporary artists now international. But I do want to do Rembrandt sometime. He's the Rembrandt's the elephant in the room. We got to cover him. Like studying theater plays without reading Shakespeare.
If you must.
Yeah.
What was the thing about plays or something, virtual play?
Well, I had an idea to do I have a play, several plays, but one in mind. I have in mind. It's the play I wrote. It's called Shireen Mai, Mother of God. Baba's mother is the protagonist, and I thought it'd be cool to do a Zoom reading of it. Get people from around the Baba lovers from all over, Indians, Westerners, to play
around the world,
to take different parts, and then to have a performance, a reading performance, not an acting performance of it. And I would, and then we would have an audience hopefully, and I would set the scenes. Now we're here, now we're there, So I'm starting to get that together.
That's cool.
Yeah, I think it'd be fun.
Great idea.
Yeah, because I don't know when I'm going to put this on now with everything. So it's a play I've never staged, and I wrote it, so I might as well give it some life. Yeah, and it'll also be a way to see what people think of it, maybe some changes.
Well, I'm sure people will show up. Huge numbers of people seem to be showing up for quite a number of things.
Yeah.
Especially if you get the Indian crowd in on it.
Yeah, well, the Mumbai group does Baba plays regularly. There's people there that are used to acting. And so this is people who can act with their voice is what I'm looking for. And then there's a few of them there that are good. And the play focuses on the main time of the play is 1913 to 1915 when Baba's mother was desperately trying to get him back to normal and failing at that.
Joe, if there's a role for a younger girl, I think from what I saw, a younger, not real young, but like a teens, late teens or early 20s girl. Nikki is awesome. She's beautiful.
Well, I should have put that I'll do a revised one. All right. I'll have there's 3 children in it. Jal, Bayram as children, and Mani as a 10-year-old. Just briefly.
Yeah, Nikki is older than 10.
Doesn't matter. I mean, an adult could do that. It's just a reading.
Who is Nikki? Is she
She's at a concert on Zoom. She is the granddaughter of Srivastava. What's his name? The guy who's
I've got to run. I got to get to the bank before they close at 5.
Okay.
All right.
Because I was thinking an
All right,
Indian girl
see you
from
all,
Lottie.
see you all in 2 weeks. Thanks for coming. Okay.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Joe, appreciate it.
He's gone. Bye-bye. All right.